Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast, sponsored by the IBCA. We are a global podcast that shares the passion for the coaching profession. You will hear the stories of coaches from all around the world. We are covering the profession in game, outside of the game, and anything in between. As always, thank you for listening. We look forward to sharing the coaches' stories with you.
On this episode of the After the Timeout podcast, we have another great guest, Tyler Wayman of Little Rock Christian Academy. Thank you so much for joining us, Coach. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So every episode, I know you said you listen a little bit. We start with the opening tip, so you kind of know what it's about a little bit. But we just wanted to get your journey, kind of where you've been, where you are now, your program, all those good things. So our listeners can get a little bit more connection and info, and maybe find something in common that they have with you, because everybody's journey
Yeah,
is different.
absolutely. So I grew up in South Arkansas, little bitty small town in South Arkansas. My dad was a coach and an educator my whole life. So he coached and was a superintendent for 36 years before he retired. And so I grew up in a coaching background. It's all I really ever wanted to do. I was the kid that played every sport growing up, and was probably better at basketball and baseball, but knew I wanted to coach basketball my whole life. Just roaming on the sidelines with him, being able to be a part of a lot of great experiences through his journey really made me want to have my own. So I went from there, went to the University of Arkansas. I was a manager for the basketball team for John Pelfrey, was the head coach at that time. And so I was able to be a manager for him. Really great experience. I knew I wanted to start off coaching in college. And so getting that behind the scenes look, behind the scenes access to a program and how things were run was huge. From there, I went to a small college in West Texas named Wayland Baptist University. I was a GA and assistant coach there. I had some different opportunities out of high school, or out of college, to go find to be a GA, but some of my mentors told me you need to go somewhere that you can recruit right away. That's the name of the game, especially at that time. A little bit shifted now with NIL, what the name of the game is, but back then it was you just had to be able to recruit players. And so went to a small college out there where I was really able to cut my teeth, start recruiting, start getting on the court coaching experience immediately. Worked for a great coach named Matt Garnett there. It was fantastic for me as a young guy. From there, I went to Rogers State University, which is the Division II outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was a second assistant there. Those 2 years were unbelievable. We had shifted from to Division II, so you couldn't play in the postseason at that time. Had a lot of success in those 2 years, winning our conference and different things. Because of that, I was able to move up and go to Eastern New Mexico University as the lead assistant for a good friend of mine. Was there for 2 years, helped really turn that program around. And then the lead assistant back at Rogers State opened up. So it was a place that was home. It was a place that was familiar to me. They were moving into the MIAA conference, which, as far as for Division II men's basketball, there's two powerhouse conferences, and it's the MIAA and it's the Lone Star Conference. And I was able to coach in both of those. You're playing against Northwest Missouri, who Coach McCollum just left to go to Drake, one of the best coaches of all levels of basketball. Other programs such as ours, such as Central Oklahoma, Missouri Southern, Pitt State. I mean, you can name the who's of Division II. And so it was a great opportunity to go back, be the lead assistant in that program, in that conference. I was there for 5 years doing that, and it was great. We had a lot of success. Then I stepped away for a little over a year, went into the administration side of Division I athletics, got a wild hair, thought I wanted to kind of move into the administration side. Did not want to do that, was not my fit for me. It was great. I worked for some great people. I was really able to use the skill set that I had in recruiting and fundraising and some of those things, but always knew I wanted to get back to coaching. Through that time off, I really fell in love with the high school level. I had coached the kids once they got to college. A lot of times they're already a made product when they get to you, so there's not a whole lot of really changing how they look or see the game. They're kind of are what they are. And so I really wanted to shift and go to the high school level where I could have some impact leading up to that, before they got to college. And so The opportunity at Little Rock Christian opened up. Phenomenal program, won back-to-back 4A state championships before I got here, moving up a classification to 5A this year. So really excited about a lot of things. It's such a great environment, such a great school, such a great community. And so really excited to kind of hit the ground running and get this school year started.
I can tell you've listened because he like each topic we're going to go deeper into, he kind of hit on just a little bit. So that was kind of perfect. So let's kind of start with the beginning of your journey, which was your time as team manager. We haven't had too many coaches on here that kind of started as a team manager. So maybe before, how that springboarded your career, maybe just start off with what were kind of your roles as a team manager, because some coaches may not know what that all entails. And then maybe kind of why you wanted to start in that role.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, knowing I wanted to coach in college, I was a diehard Razorback fan, grew up in Arkansas. My dad was really close with Nolan Richardson. So I grew up in my summers going to Fayetteville, spending time up there. And so I knew if I was going to not try to pursue playing a sport in college, that I was going to be a manager. And so I wanted to go to the University of Arkansas. So I was fortunate enough to get on there with them. You have the duties such as washing the clothes, sweeping the floor. I mean, everything that comes along with making a practice, get ready to run and being a manager. But for me, I went into it, I wanted to know how I could travel. One of my early things as a freshman was, how can I go see all these places? How can I go meet as many people as possible? So what jobs do people not want to do? And very quickly early on, I realized it was filming. It was breaking down film. That was a job that people didn't want to spend hours in the evening of their college life breaking down film. So as a freshman, I said, give it to me. So what I would do was during practice, I would be on our scout team where I would help run the plays against our guys getting ready for the game. And then when we would go to a game, I would take a laptop and I would go plug into a camera, an ESPN camera out in the ESPN truck, whatever it was, and I would live break down the film. So now you have synergy where you can send your film to and they do it for you. Back then we had a thing called Exos. And so what Exos was I would plug into the camera and I would break down the play, side ball screen, pick and roll, offensive rebound, miss three, whatever, the whole sequence of the play. I mean, I got pretty good at it to where by halftime I would be caught up to where I would take my laptop to Coach Pelfrey and, hey, he wanted to see, we're getting killed on this side pick and roll. I need to see the film of it. So at halftime, he could watch it, make an adjustment. After the game, he could do the same thing. And so that's really how I started cutting my teeth. And then I became super close with Isaac Brown, was an assistant at that time. He went on to be the head coach at Wichita State for a little bit and those type of things. And he's a mentor of mine in coaching. And I got to be close with him. So I would go watch film with him, break down film. And then that just slowly got to open the doors more for me to take on more responsibility. Coach Pelfrey that I worked for was big on, he wanted every game recorded every night. And so back then you had floor to ceiling recording machines. So like you would put a DVD in, you would put it on the channel, and then you had to sit there and pause it so the commercial would be cut out because you didn't want a commercial in it. And so for hours on a Friday night, Saturday night, whatever it is, you're just sitting in this film room, starting and stopping, recording, and just stacking these DVDs up, And so I just started to really try to take on what's jobs nobody else wanted to do. What are the thankless jobs? And over time, it just grew and grew. And I was fortunate enough to kind of be brought behind the scenes. And then all of a sudden you start being in those meetings where you're hearing the strategy, you're hearing the game plan, you're hearing the scouting report. You're getting to kind of piece together what a whole program looks like. And so I was very thankful to those guys that let me do that. Coach Pelfrey, Coach Brown, and a lot of other coaches behind the scenes there. And so that's kind of how it started. That's kind of what my mindset going into it was you already have your duties as a manager. So what other ones can I do to take on that nobody else wants to? Because, I'm here for a reason. You're here to, yes, you're a college student, you want to have a good time, but I also had a mindset of I'm trying to get into coaching. And I heard a coach say at one time, a manager works for that phone call, right? You want to be able to go to your head coach and say, I need a phone call to get this job, whatever it is. And so that was my mindset all those 4 years of, I just want to be able to be somebody they don't mind picking up the phone and calling. And that just, until they get to know me, that starts with work ethic and how hard can you work. And so that was kind of my mindset going into it.
So, Coach, people who are younger than us have probably had no idea what you're talking about there. I remember taking camcorders to like freshman games and then slicing it up to huddle.
Yes,
I even remember in football, the DVD exchange, right?
absolutely.
And somebody always tried to pull a fast one. Oh, I don't have my DVDs. Will you give me mine? Nah. But I want to talk to you a little bit about like not necessarily but the coaching process, right? And maybe how it's changed or how it's similar, right? You kind
Yeah.
of had a more traditional path, I guess, for coaches of our age. That's kind of
Mhm.
was the path, right? You started, if you wanted to coach college, you were a manager or a adobo or a video guy, and then kind of work your way up from there. Do you see that process has changed a little bit with the different landscape of college basketball, maybe more with people having connections to this and that, or is it still maybe half and half kind of the same?
What I've seen it change more of is what levels those guys are going to afterwards. I feel like you see a lot more of the managers going to the Division II level now. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's fantastic. You get more experience if you go that way right out. I think at the Division I level, what you're seeing a lot of is the connections coming in already. Whether that's to a player that they're trying to recruit, whether that's to a company for NIL reasons, family running the business, whatever it is. I think you're seeing more of those things. And then I think what you're seeing is less and less managers kind of getting hired afterwards, which I think's hurting the game a little bit because most of the time you go to be a manager, you're not getting paid, right? You're not getting a whole lot. I got for my 4 years, I got my books paid for every year. That was what they gave us. Books, you got gear, and you got to be around the team, which for me was enough. That was plenty. For other people, I think nowadays they're wanting more access, right? Money buys you more things, especially with the NIL world. So I definitely think some programs value that. I know there's some that still value work ethic. I've gotten to be close with a number of Division I coaches around the country, and there are a good amount that still value somebody coming in just willing to work. But for me, I see the shift in once those guys graduate from being a manager, maybe the opportunities of where they go next have changed a little bit. There's a lot of Division II coaches that are good friends of mine that are started off as managers the same way. And I think you're seeing those guys understand I could go from being a manager to being a assistant dobo to a dobo or video coordinator, whatever. You don't have the recruiting responsibilities off campus in those roles as you do if you go to the Division II level. And so I think what you're seeing is a lot of managers understanding how to cut their teeth a little quicker now. And that's going to those Division II levels where they can recruit, they can get on the road, they can be on the floor coaching, all those kind of things. And so I think it's good for basketball. I think it just expands the quality of coaches at every level. That's one thing that I'm a big advocate for is people understanding that there's great levels of basketball even beyond Division I, Division II, NAIA, junior college. They all have great coaches. And so I think the more people you can get in those roles that come from those backgrounds only make the game even that much better.
So that's a perfect lead into my next question. Division II basketball, right? You've been a lot of places, and we always like to talk to Division III coaches, Division II, different levels about like Jon and I know how good that basketball really is,
Right.
but you look. I think I saw a tweet the other day. There's still like 400, 500 kids in the portal that haven't
It's
signed
crazy.
anywhere, right?
Yes.
Maybe and I think sometimes it's an education thing. So how do we
Mhm.
educate players, parents, or maybe AAU coaches
Right.
on how good not only Division II basketball but Division III, JUCO, all
Absolutely.
these levels are where you have options. And I mean, there's plenty of times where you look at the beginning of the season, D2 teams mop up on lower level D1
Absolutely.
teams, right? Just pull them out the windows. So how can we educate people on the type of basketball and how good it really is? Those kids now still have an opportunity. I feel
Right.
like they're a D1, 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 and that falls through. And now a lot of those kids aren't going to play anymore.
Exactly. And I think the first and the easiest thing first, and it's one of those things that's probably so easy people don't do it, but I always tell people, go watch a game. Most states and most areas have a Division II, have a Division III, and are close enough to where you can go watch. And I tell people, go watch a game, because what you're going to see, I've been at the NAI and the Division II level, recruited junior college, seen D3 games, all that. I think when you get to those levels, you see how good of coaches there are. There's great players because they're going to be good recruiters, but the coaching is unbelievable. One of my best friends in this business is a guy named Vinay Patel. He's the head coach at Angelo State University. We were at Rogers State together. He went and took over a program at Oklahoma City University, who was a great powerhouse of NAIA. He took over in October as the head coach, made it to the national tournament that year. That's a credit to coaching. He was able to rally those guys and also the talent of that team. And then he goes to Northwestern Oklahoma State, same thing, turns that program into a 20-win team. Now he's at Angelo State, which is a powerhouse in Division II, doing the same thing. And so I can talk about countless coaches like that. The guy, Justin Barkley, the guy I worked for at Rogers State, MIAA, Midwest basketball is some of the best basketball of any level that you'll see. And so I think what the first thing I tell people is you need to go watch a game, especially when I hear I'm a Division I player, I'm going to D1 only. And I don't ever knock anybody for that dream. But what I tell somebody is, okay, well, if that's what you think, but all you're being recruited by is Division II or other schools, then you're not wanting to play college basketball. You're wanting to play Division I. That's two different things, right? When a kid tells me they want to play college basketball, okay, that means at any level, you want to play college basketball. But then they say, no, I really only want to go here. Well, you're not wanting to play college basketball. You're wanting to play Division I. Those are two different things. And so I always tell people, in my career, I've been fortunate enough at the Division II level to coach against Derek White. Playing for the Celtics right now, proving what he can do. He was at Colorado Springs. Played against him my very first year of Division II coaching. A guy named Nicholas Kay played at Metro State University in Denver. Started for the Australian national team on the Olympics this year. Guy named Trevor Hudgens played for Northwest Missouri and Ben McCollum. He's on the Rockets right now. Had another young man named Ryan Hawkins. Uses his COVID year to grad transfer from Northwest Missouri to Creighton. He goes and he's Big East Sixth Man of the Year. So all these players cut their teeth at the Division II level. And I think what you're seeing at the Division II level, especially from my experience, is you're seeing coaches that know how to build a program. And I'm not saying other levels don't. This is my experience from being at the Division II level. You have to build a complete program, right? You don't have 15 coaches like the Division I's do to babysit a kid going to class. So you've really got to set your culture. This is what we expect. You're going to go to class. We're going to monitor it. We're going to follow up on it. We're going to lift weights. We're going to practice hard. All these things that make you successful, they have to do it with 3 coaches, right? Division III level, they can't even practice with their players until like October 15th, I think it is, when they can. That's the first time they see them come in the gym. Like, that blows my mind. I can't imagine you get these kids that you bring to your program, and then the first time you can work with them is mid-October. Like, credit to those coaches. You've got to be as detailed as anybody in the country because you can't waste any time. You've got to hit the ground running and going. And so what I always tell people is if you're that fringe player, right, Division II, low Division I, whatever it is, you need to go to a program that's going to develop you as a person, as a player. And then as we've seen with the transfer portal, if you produce well enough, those Division I dreams are still there. It's not like they go away. People are constantly moving up. But what I always tell people first is just go watch a game. You go sit in the stands, especially when I get that call of, or in the past I've gotten that call of, I think such and such can come play for you. Okay, have them come watch a game. Come see what it's like. And I'm speaking from the boys side. I know the girls side's the same way, at those levels. Fantastic coaches. I've been fortunate enough to be around some great ones that I've gone in their office and taken stuff from them to apply it to us. And so I just think that there's so much opportunity out there. I think you see the NIL world kind of diminish the Division II levels and Division IIIs a little bit because there's so much emphasis on getting NIL money and going to Division I. You don't think about just going and playing basketball for the joy of playing at a good place. It's like you said, Todd, we would go play exhibition games and be up on these low majors by double digits and then have to pull everybody out and play everybody. So that way, they got their win and you moved on. But I can count every year we've done that, being up double digits because we're better than them. You got better players, a better program, and so I just encourage kids to go watch both. Go watch the level you think you're at, and then come watch the level that's probably recruiting you. And there's probably not much difference unless you're a high major recruit. And so that's always my suggestion to people, kids that ask me that. I just say, first you need to go sit in a practice. Make sure you can make it through a practice for those coaches because they're going to be detailed, they're going to be passionate, and then go watch a game. And so we would always encourage kids when I was at that level to come watch. I'm bringing a Division II Classic to my gym here at Little Rock Christian. We're going to have 4 Division II schools playing games over the course of 2 days in our own arena. And so I want my kids to go see it. Hey, this is great basketball. Come watch it. And so that was a big thing I wanted to do right away. When I got presented with this, when I first got the job, I was all for it. Bring those teams to our gym. Now my kids got no excuses than to go Division II basketball. Come sit by me and watch the game now. Let's talk about if this is the level you can play at, kind of thing. And so I'm just an advocate of all levels of basketball. I've been fortunate enough to coach at a lot of them, and I think there's fantastic people and programs at every level.
So in 2020, you were named a top 30 under 30 coach by the National Association of Basketball Coaches, which is Todd and I like to do our homework, which is a long way from you sleeping in your office in your first job. So I kind of want to combine 2 of these a little bit, so in your journey, how did you kind of know it was time for that next opportunity each time?
Yeah.
Kind of building on, obviously people will see the award and the top 30 under 30 and, that's a great honor, but people don't see the sleeping in the office. So how did you kind of go from maybe that bottom from team manager, from splicing film to sleeping in an office to a top 30 under 30? How did you know each time it was time to move forward?
I tell people all the time that if you're around good people, they'll let you know when it's time to make those moves, right? If you've got a good boss you work for or good other assistants with you, they're usually going to help put you in those positions. And for me, it was very much we had success. So people were always kind of sniffing around. Hey, are you interested in this? Are you interested in that? And you kind of got to sift through what helps benefit your career and move up. But also I trusted the people around me. Vinay Patel, like I mentioned earlier, the head coach at Angelo State, great friend of mine. And we would always have those conversations. Hey, this is open. What do you think? And he would be honest with me. Hey, I don't know if you're ready for that. You may need to wait a minute. And I had to be humble enough to accept, he knows me, he knows my abilities, and he's looking out for me. And I can go down the line of people in my life like that I would ask, and they would say, hey, yes, you're ready, go try to get it. And sometimes you don't get those jobs. I remember I interviewed for a couple of lead assistant jobs before I got the one in Eastern New Mexico. And I would get to the final 2, but sometimes I think it's the worst to get to the final 2 because now you're right there. But I would get there and I wouldn't get it. And your immediate thought is always, well, I'm better than that guy. But I had to take a step back and say, okay, there's a reason why. And so I would go back to those people that were in my life for a reason and just say, hey, what do I need to do to get to this point? I always try to surround myself with people that were a step ahead of me in my career. So when I was the second assistant, I tried to find myself with people that were lead assistants. Hey, I'm trying to get to where you're at. So tell me what you've done. Help me. When I was a lead assistant, I had guys that were head coaches, guys that were either good friends of mine that had been head coaches or that were at Division I schools or whatever it may be. I would try to go to those guys and just learn from them. How did you get here? Right? We're the same age. You're here. I'm trying to get to be a head coach like you are? What do I need to do? And so that's something that I always think helped me through my career, is just trying to be in those circles that were just a step down the path of the career ahead of where I am. Because that's one, it's motivation, but it's also people that can look back and tell you, here's the mistakes I made, here's the things that went right. Because no career is the same. There's not a cookie cutter. If you do this, you're going to be here by this age. Everybody's different. And college basketball, high school basketball, all of it's changing nowadays. And so paths continue to change. And so I think that for me, it's the people around me. And then, especially at the college level, it's you, and even high school, you've got to win. I was fortunate enough to be on teams that won national tournament teams, conference championship teams. 3 years in a row, we had the Heartland Conference Player of the Year. It was 3 different guys, and so we were just fortunate enough to be around good players as well. And then, but it doesn't come without its share of heartache, right? I got in the final two for multiple head coaching jobs, and then you don't get them. You get that call from somebody on the committee that said, hey, four of us voted for you. The one guy that didn't was the AD, and he made the decision. You get those calls. And so I went through all that, and I always tried to reflect back and, what have I done to this point that's put me in this room? But then what kept me from getting that job? Is it just lack of experience? Do I need to just keep cutting my teeth for another year? That was a big reason of going to Eastern New Mexico, where you talk about sleeping in the office. I was a lead assistant. One of my good friends, he came up the way I did. He was a manager at University of Texas. He was about 4 years older than me, so he had been a GA while I was still a manager. And then he went to the Division II level while I was a GA. So one of those guys that was a step ahead of me goes to Eastern New Mexico, and we had to flip a program, and we got the job in April. And we had just come off at Rogers State winning the Heartland Conference Championship. So it was one of those things where success, and then my boss was very supportive of, okay, you need to take the next step of going and being the lead assistant. Now, we all know moving those 18 inches over, whether it's second assistant to lead assistant or to head coach, you're never fully prepared. So you got to just kind of jump in the fire and go. And so going to Eastern New Mexico, it was, hey, we got to hit the ground running. Our families aren't here. So it was air mattresses in the office and work all day. You get up at 6 a.m. and you start working until midnight, and you blow the air mattress up in the office and do it again. And so, there's those things that aren't glamorous. You don't get credit for those, but you have to do them in order to keep moving up. And then, touching on that award, it was a fantastic award. I never thought it was going to come. It was something that in my mind, I'd seen friends of mine get on, and I always wanted to do it, wanted to be a part of it. But I just thought, hey, that year I got it, actually, the day they announced it, I had turned 30. So I was like, well, I'm too old to make the list now. But then it got announced on that day. So that year was the last year I could do it. And, we were a top 15 team in the country that year, made the national tournament. Actually, that was the year it got shut down because of COVID. So didn't get to play in the national tournament that year, but had a fantastic team. All the credit goes to those guys, because if you're not 25-4 going into that year, I probably don't get it. There's only a few slots for Division II guys on that list. And so just very thankful for the coaches in my life that have nudged me and pushed me to take that leap. Hey, you're ready. We've seen this, go do it. And then I think you've got to have people in your life that are willing to tell you, hey, you're not ready, or I'm going to make this call for you. You need to jump on this. You got to have those people in your life on both ends of the spectrum.
All right, so we're kind of at the halfway point here. We're going to go halftime adjustments, and we're going to talk some general X's and O's. What I think is interesting to talk about with you is, right, you've kind of been at all kinds of levels. You talked about your 25-4 or D2, probably running some pretty elaborate stuff, right? Some different stuff. How have you gone about kind of filtering what you want to do, and okay, I've done this before, but then adjusting it to the level you're at, right? Because you can't, you look at, like, we use UConn, right? UConn, their plays look like they'd be a football play, X, Y, this, right? They'd run like 700 actions in one. but you can never do that at a high school, right? But you have that knowledge. So how do you kind of filter that all out and find the pieces and mix and match to what you like and what works for that
Right.
level?
That's honestly, that's probably been the hardest thing for me this summer. Because, like you're saying, I've got a binder that has all the stuff I've run every stop I've been, but then I've got another binder that has the scouting reports from teams we've coached against. And the same thing, I've coached against teams that they run a set every time down the floor. And so they've got good stuff. I think for me, it was, the personnel on the floor, right? Whether it was at the college level or this new the high school level now with my team now, I had to really get to know my players first because some years when we we're at the college level, we had a big that was our best player. So you got to run stuff that gets him the ball. What I found at this level so far at the high school level is their willingness to try to execute everything I'm asking them. So it's up to me to try to filter that, like you're saying, of what can they handle. Early on, I'll be honest, when I got here this summer, I put way too much stuff in this summer. Like I don't want to call a bunch of stuff, but like in my mind, it was right. I've been an assistant so long. Here's my 15 best plays I loved in my career, and I put them in. And I got guys being like, "What are we talking about, coach? Like we just went over this yesterday and you want me to run it in the game today." Like, so I had to really take a step back with my staff and those things of like, what can these guys handle? Here's 4 or 5 things that I want to run, whether they're base offense. I'll run a lot of stuff that is you call it something, but it's really just to create movements. We talk a lot about we want to get to 3 sides of the floor. So the ball cross that midline at least 3 times in the possession. I think every time it crosses it, the percentage of your scoring goes up. And what I went back to after that first kind of team camp this summer and having way too much stuff in was let's just simplify it and what can get us sides of the floor. If I'm going to harp on swinging the ball, get to sides of the floor, I need to teach that and I need them to know what I mean. And so I had to take a step back. And then for me as well, we've got phenomenal players here. We've got a kid that's top 15 in the country in his class as juniors. Then we've got a couple other juniors that are getting Division I looks, a couple good sophomores. But we're young. And so some of those things that they may realize and understand next year, they don't understand yet this year. And so I've got to really do a good job of going slow with that, which is not my personality. I want to hit the ground running and let's go. So yeah, it's like you're saying, I came in with this book of like, man, I'm going to be able to run all this stuff. This is great. And then it was like, oh, throw that out the window. We've got to really fine tune it for these teams. So what we've been talking about with our actual actions that we do have in is they're more geared towards, I just want this person to catch it in this spot. So this whole action is so, this player can get it at this point, and then let's just play out of it. So that's what we've had to shift to as much of, you know, instead of 4 different options and you do this and you do this and there's look at this read and all these things is I just want the ball in this spot. So this is what we're going to do to get it here and then let's play. So that's kind of how I've shifted this summer. I'm sure, as you guys know, being head coach longer than I have, I'm sure it'll shift again in the next few months and then it might shift again a few months after that. But for the most part right now, I've been trying to adjust to instead of just running the action that's got a lot of pretty cuts and passes and things, how can just as quickly as we can, because in Arkansas, we play with the shot clock. So it's 35-second shot clock. And so, these kids, for some of these kids, they haven't ever done that before. So we can't take 20 seconds off trying to cut and make all these elaborate moves and things. And now we've got 10 seconds left on the shot clock and shoot a bad shot. So that's what I've really had to shift to this year and this summer is, less worrying about the cuts and the actions and what they're called and how great they look on film and more so of I want this person to get the ball on this spot. And so that's really what we've shifted to, especially going into this school year. I'm fortunate that I only have 2 or 3 kids that play football. So most of my kids are in basketball right now. And so we're able to kind of start working on those things from day one and getting ready for the season.
So as we kind of shift into the second half of the show, with every guest, we have a specific topic. For you, it's a little bit unique and different, which is taking over. I don't want to call it an elite program, but an elite program.
Yeah.
You kind of took over a program that has now won back-to-back state championships, as you kind of mentioned before you arrived. So maybe kind of talk about maybe dealing with those expectations when you come in, deciding kind of like what to keep. Obviously, they were successful, so it's one of those things where you don't want to dump everything and start over completely, but then also deciding kind of how to make it yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Kyle Pennington was the coach before me. Friend of mine did a fantastic job. They won back-to-back 4A state championships, multiple Division I guys, Division II basketball players go on. Tremendous program. I step in and we move up a classification to 5A, and our conference in that 5A is probably, even from an outsider, when I was recruiting the state, it was always the best. The 5A Central was one of the best in the state of any classification. So stepping into that with a team that, you've returned some big pieces, but also some new guys that are being counted on. And so that's a big challenge. And so kind of like what you said early on, for me, especially this summer, it was, I don't want to completely scrap everything, but I've also there's things that I'm going to harp on that Coach Pennington didn't, because we're just two different people. And so my main focus this summer was talking about our non-negotiables as far as on the court. Here's the things we're going to run defensively that aren't going to change. So really trying to harp on that. But like you said, I don't want to take away what's made them successful either. What's made each individual player. So I relied on my staff. I was able to retain all our coaches. We shifted around some pieces, and I have a phenomenal varsity assistant named Colby Sims, and he's really been big for me to, hey, coach, here's what kind of makes these guys go. Here's what these guys can really handle, and really breaking it down for me player by player. And so we've been able to come in and keep some of the same things, but also tweak some. They operated at such a high level, though, where there's not a whole lot of difference. Terminology is different for a lot of these things, but the grand scheme of things, they understand it. And like I said, most of my guys play basketball year round. So we were able to hit the ground running in May and really just go through the summer working on things. And so for me, I just didn't want to come in and completely try to reinvent the wheel, right? They were successful. They had for a reason. The program, the school, all the sports here are successful. So for me, it was coming in right away and trying to meet with not only my basketball staff, basketball parents, the kids, but also other coaches on the campus of, all right, what makes this place successful? Why has it been able to win state championships in a bunch of sports? And so really trying to dive in to tell me the things that have worked, because I need to know if they've worked and they align with what I'm doing, then there's no reason for me to come in and change it. Let's just keep it the same. Let's don't overthink this. Let's roll with this. And so that's been for me, I think that surprises people sometimes. I think a lot of times you get coaches that come in, and especially first year head coaches that come in and say, I'm going to completely scrap this and I'm going to do it my way from the start, and things don't work out. And so for me, it was trying to be humble enough to come in and say, look, you guys have won before I got here. So tell me why. Tell me why you won. Now let me tell you what I can bring to this equation to help try to keep it going. And so that's what I've really focused on, and really trying to show my players early on, especially the summer, that I trust them. I think that was a big thing for me that I wanted to tell them was, hey, if I'm asking you to trust me, I'm going to trust you as well. So I need to trust you to know what spots you perform well in. And that's where my staff came in, and then putting those guys in those positions to be able to show me what they can do and trust that they're going to perform like I know they can. And so we went and played some big talent, some big teams in the summer, really tried to test it early. We played in a big team camp in Little Rock, and that was about a week after I got the job. So we didn't have, really a whole lot in. Really, we're all still trying to get to know each other. So that one was hard for me to sit back and just kind of let it happen, because I wanted to see them play and see who could play hard. And then each camp that we went to, we progressively put more and more stuff in. We knew each other a little bit better. And so it was a time for me just to show these guys here's what I'm about. Here's what I'm going to bring to the table. But I'm also not going to ask you to completely change your game. I'm not going to ask you to go try to fit a square peg in a circle hole. And now we're both beating our heads. Because at the end of the day, I want to win too. I want to win a third state championship. So for me, how can I do that? And the first way I know how to do that is coming in, not trying to reinvent the wheel, getting to know them, understanding their strengths, and then adding my strengths on top of it. And so that's what we've done. And there's been some ups and downs. It hasn't gone just smooth and sunshine and roses this summer, but we've worked through it. And now we're in a good spot coming up on, 2 months before we play our first game.
So you mentioned you have a top 15 player in the country, number
Yes,
one
sir.
player in the state. How do you find that balance, right? Because he needs to get the ball, right? He's the best.
Right,
He's a
right.
really good player. He
Yeah,
helps your team win, but also making it a team game, because I
absolutely.
feel like a lot of times there could be from some of the other players maybe a little bit resentment. They know he's the
Absolutely.
best player, but I want the ball too. I want to have an opportunity. How
Mhm.
do you go about finding that balance of
Yeah.
he needs to get the ball because, well, he's really good and puts the ball in the basket and helps us win. But we also have to involve our other players because
Yep.
eventually, at some point, you're going to need them, right? You're going to
Yep.
need them to
Absolutely.
have a team game, whether it's in the playoffs or a tight game where
Yep.
somebody does something different.
Absolutely. No, no, it's a great question. I think for me early on, probably coming from the levels I've been at to this helped a little bit with that because especially at the college level, you're recruiting these kids in, but you have a little bit more ability to just look at them and be brutally honest. Hey, you're at that, especially at that level, they're kids, but they're a little closer to being grown men. So you're able to be like, hey, this is what we're trying to do. And so I brought that approach to here. And I'm fortunate that this group of guys at Little Rock Christian has been together and they really get along well. They know all their strengths. And they also know that JJ is JJ. JJ Andrews is our top 15 kid, number one player in the state. And at the end of the day, we're gonna go as he goes. But like you said, it doesn't take away from the other players. JJ's been phenomenal. We spent a lot of time together early, and he's as unselfish of a future pros I've ever been around. He's a guy that on our first team camp that we went to, had all the guys write down, three things that they brought to our team. And then I had them write three things they think they can improve on, and then their three goals for the year. And so, you go through those and you can really see who gets the mindset and who doesn't. And JJ was one of those guys that really got it. And so for me, especially with our team and what we've put in this year with JJ and other guys, is I try to really teach them the big picture of a scenario, right? Yes, I'm trying to get it in this action to JJ right here where he can go score and make a play. But he's got to know here's your other reads as well. And if this guy does this, you need to throw it to this guy and trust your teammate. And so we do a lot of scenarios in our practice where I'll put, one team's down 7 with 2 minutes left and you got to come back and all these things. And what I love about those scenarios is it makes you trust guys. We don't have time to try to pound the ball and get my own. We got to trust each other to make a play. And that's where you build that trust for those winning moments in a game. They do it in practice. And this group's been a great group so far to practice with. And so I keep trying to put on them, hey, here's winning scenarios, winning moments, and here's what you're looking for. Because, like you said, it's no secret for our team, for any team we play, who our best player is, who the best player in the state is, And so with that, I'm trying to teach him and all our guys. Yes, when you get the ball in the spot I'm asking you to get in, your first thoughts look to go score. So I'm putting you in that spot. But also, here's the things the defense can do to stop you. And if they do that, here's where the ball needs to go. One of the things that a mentor of mine said a long time ago was when you win, there's enough joy for everybody. And so I think that's what you've seen in this program. And one thing I noticed when I stepped in was they've won at a high level. So everybody understands sacrifice of themselves for the greater good of their team. One of the quotes we're putting on our wall that I wanted to put this year was it's the phrase called Ubuntu. And it's a South African phrase that just means I am because we are. And so just trying to incorporate that I'm the best I can be because our team's the best it can be. And so I think if you live in that and that's your standard, then it allows those kids that, again, maybe they want a bigger role and they're working towards it, but it shows them the value of team. I've got guys on my team that we've already had conversations. Hey, how you're going to help this team is be able to make a three and guard. And I promise you, you'll play. You'll have a role. So for me, it's being honest with those guys, telling them, hey, here, because again, it does me no good to tiptoe around the fact of who we have on our team. But I also need to be honest not only with him, but also our other guys of, hey, here's your role. Here's what you're going to do. And if you do this, we got a good shot to win a third state championship. And so it gives them ownership. They can take value in that role. And then building that team chemistry, that team concept in practice is huge.
So an interesting thing about being at an elite level program and having a top player in the state is scheduling. And sometimes the challenges of finding people that say, yeah, we'll play the back-to-back state
Absolutely.
champion, the
Absolutely.
top ranked player in the state. So maybe, we've talked a lot about being an elite program, and you've talked a lot about some things and players in the team, but maybe some insights for a coach of, yes, you want to be the best, but now you have to find people that want to play you in
Right.
return.
Absolutely. When I got the job, we still needed 4 or 5 games, and it was easy to find tournaments to go to because you can go find those ones that you have other top level players, right? Like we're going to one in Western Kentucky to play against some great competition. I got a call the other day from the tournament that's in Highland, Illinois, that they put on. I think it's Highland, but they wanted us to come play the number 1 player in the country. And so I was like, you can find those teams. Those teams want to play you because they've got other good players. But for me, the scheduling was I tried to go to the teams that were up a few classifications of ours because they've usually got great teams, great programs, and they're not afraid to play. But still, it was really hard. I tried to tell people from my side of it, I'm brand new head coach to this. I've got all juniors and sophomores. They graduated 3 seniors last year that all started, that went on to play college basketball. I know on paper what we have, but the competitor in me would think that if you're going to get us, you need to get us now, because when these guys are all juniors and seniors next year or second semester this year, they're going to have grown up. So your best chance is early. So I always take the mindset of I want to go play the best early to build for March. That's always the way at the college level. I talked about going and playing Derek White, going and playing Metro State, who had a guy that played on the Australian national team. Those were in the same weekend. We played both those teams back-to-back nights. And so that's the way I was brought up in coaching was you play the best teams early because it's going to help you in March. And so it's been hard. We just finished like our schedule a week ago, and I got the job in May trying to start finishing the schedule. And so I think you've got to put an emphasis on trying to look at past schedules of what teams aren't afraid to play bigger matchups. And then it's just staying diligent with it and trying to get creative. We go into a couple of tournaments that some teams that I wanted to play that were dodging me to play single games. I purposely went and got in those tournaments with them to try to play them, because if you're supposed to be better than us, then why wouldn't you want to play us early? Like if you're the best team in our classification, then you should want to play us because you'll probably beat us the first game of the night if it's on paper, but they didn't want to. So I had to get creative and almost chasing those teams down a little bit of like, no, we're going to play and we're going to see where we're both at. And then we'll be different teams by the end of the year. I think that, and then I've been really have appreciated the teams that haven't batted an eye on that said, yeah, we'll play, because they're looking at it the same way I am. If we beat them, it helps their team. And so I really appreciate those guys. And then you take notice of that, because I promise you in a couple of years, when some of these guys that are on my team leave, those teams are going to want to call me and play all of a sudden now once these guys have graduated. And so I'll remember who didn't want to play then. And so for me, it's just not, it's sticking to my guns and my belief of go play the best. go find them, whether they're out of state, whether they're in state, go play the best teams. And that's scheduling. And some years it's going to be, it means you're 500 going into conference, below 500, whatever it is. But you just trust that it's going to pay off in the state tournament, in the state championship when it's time to win that game. So that's my scheduling motto and belief. And some people call me crazy and have been shocked by it, especially this early, but it's the only way I know how to do it. And I don't see it changing anytime soon.
So as we move into our last two segments, the first one we call 30-second timeout. It's your chance to kind of run the show. It's a very rough 30 seconds. There's no official in your timeout. It's your opportunity to talk about you or your family or your program or something you want our listeners to know, or turn the tables on Todd and I and ask us a question. Your 30-second timeout.
Yeah, I think I kind of touched on this when we were communicating about setting this up, but one of the things I'm interested in is both of you guys have gone from the boys side and coach girls and different things throughout your careers. Like, I guess that transition always intrigues me with that of, what's some of the big difference you've seen kind of on both sides of that, similarities. And because you get the people that say, well, it's completely different and I would never go do that or whatever. But I got to think there's probably more similarities than people think. And, so I'm just interested to know that kind of similarities, what you've found as being more that you've enjoyed on that side as compared to other, if there is, or whatever.
Well, Todd, I will let you actually start this one because you have been a boys head coach before as well.
I don't know. I always kind of thought it was the same. That's how I've always looked at it. Basketball is basketball. Every person's different. Every team you go on, no matter boys, girls, youth, has different personalities, different people. So it's all just, to me, it was always just building those relationships. Obviously, in the boys game, you have some more athleticism at times where you can run maybe a lob play or something like that. Yeah. But there's good players on both sides. I've always thought it wasn't that big of a difference. And whenever I've gone on interviews or anything, I'm like, it's basketball. It's building relationships with people. It's just like at your workplace, right? You're dealing with all people from all different cultures, backgrounds. So it's always been adjusting.
Right.
I'm sure there's some bigger differences, but that's how I've always kind of treated it as, hey, it's just basketball. We're gonna do the best for our kids. We're gonna build our relationships and put them in the best situation to be successful.
Yeah. I think, we're educators first and foremost. Todd is a PE teacher during the day and I'm a social worker during the day. And, I think Todd and I are exposed to so many different people and levels and ages. I mean, Todd is an elementary school PE teacher and a college basketball coach. So, and I'm a middle school social worker and a high school basketball coach. So I think it's one of those where like I might start my day working with an 11-year-old male or female and finish my day working with a 17-year-old. So, I think it's not only just the boy girl part. I think it's just the being an educator part. Todd will sometimes start his day with a 5-year-old and finish his day with a 22-year-old. So I think it's do I think there's maybe some minor differences? Yes, but as now done doing boys for 8 years, and now this will be my 12th or so, 13th in girls. I love both games, and I love now that they're both getting exposure and that both Olympic championships were awesome games. And so I think that's my favorite part is now the girls side just getting the recognition. But I truly think yes, Todd and I have both done boys and girls, but we've also done preschool teaching through college coaching. So I think that adds, maybe we're just both nuts, but that adds an element to it as well.
Absolutely. I'm a girl dad for two little girls. And so I look ahead to their athletic careers if they have them and different things. And it's always interesting to me to, I'd probably look at it a little more of the coaches they hopefully play for one day than probably other people would look at that. And so I always love hearing, coaches that talk about not changing their culture or their beliefs just because they're coaching one or the other. Like you said earlier, Todd, like it's basketball, right? we can apply the same principles and life principles and standards and excellence to both. And so my wife played college volleyball, and so she understands that as well. And so I can see myself down the road one day, depending on what sport they choose, coaching them, whether that's, summer basketball or whatever. And so I'm always interested in trying to pick the brains of people that have kind of gone before me in those roles. And so that's awesome.
That's going to be the hardest one, Coach. I have a 10-year-old daughter. I'm very picky. I don't know if she can go play here. All right, I'm going to get involved in this. I try not to, but it's like, hey, good coaching is good coaching. So that gets tricky, especially from the basketball coach perspective.
I bet so.
If it was something else like swimming or something, I'd be like, I don't know, you go.
I'm hoping she plays volleyball and her mom can just handle that. And I'll cheerlead in the stands.
There you go. All right, last segment. This is where we get into all the serious, hard-hitting topics. Quick hitters. First one, something all coaches could teach better.
I think they could teach the why to what they're doing on the floor, right? I think you see a lot of coaches that do a good job of teaching the why in life, but I believe in teaching the big picture of why we're going to guard a certain way or why we're going to run this action. We stop our practice a lot, and I tell them, I want you to be on the midline. You're a foot off of it, and here's why it's going to get us beat. If this guy cuts right here or this screen comes, you have no chance to get there. And so I think coaches can do a better job of teaching the why in those moments, as opposed to just, here's what I'm telling you to do, go do it. And so that would be something that I think if we do a better job of that, kids start to understand the grand scheme of the game, and the higher up they move in their career, there's not as much of a lull or drop off when they get to those levels.
All right. So we got best place to eat in Little Rock.
Oh, I'm a barbecue guy, so my favorite is probably Wright's Barbecue. It's tremendous. It's one of the best. They've got them all over the state, but in Little Rock, that's probably my favorite.
Me and John's grand plan is to compile this list one day and go on like a world tour of all the places that people
go see them all.
Yeah, we got a pretty good list now.
Coaches probably have the best recommendations, especially because you're on the road so much.
Coaches know how to eat.
Your go-to gear to coach games. What are you going with?
I'm gonna go quarter zip and like golf pants, because I'm so glad we don't wear suits anymore.
Right.
When COVID hit the college level, that was the best thing COVID did for college basketball, was that coaches stopped wearing suits. Because you look back and you're like, why did we ever do that? Like, why were we in suits? Baseball coaches wear a baseball uniform. Why? Football coaches have a sweater or a polo on. Why are we in full suits on the sideline? Yeah. This is ridiculous. So,
I coached baseball for a while too. I never agreed. Like, why do I have to wear a uniform? I'm not playing. It's April in Chicago. It's 30 degrees out. I'm not wearing baseball pants. Like, give me some sweat.
Give me some sweat. So I'll never go away from it. We'll go quarter zip and slacks all day.
All right, this might be a controversial one, because I feel like some people have some very passion about this. Are you a whistle or no whistle in practice person?
I'm a whistle. Yeah, I'm a whistle. Too. I'm a whistle. I just think, I find myself not using it probably as much as I thought I would, but I definitely think there's some times to get attention, especially, it's really not even a high school or college. Every kid's attention span's about 3 seconds nowadays. So it's a good, just quick, burst, get their attention, go from there. So I'm a whistle. During COVID, we had to use the handheld ones. I don't know if you guys saw those. It was like made the worst noise. So like they were pointless. So it was like during COVID, it was like no whistle, because you got the mask and then you're trying to do a thing, and it was ridiculous. But yeah, so I'm a whistle in practice guy.
Yeah, and I lose those things all the time. Like I put it somewhere, and then
I've got like 6 of them in my desk drawer that I just pull out and grab.
Now, I'm a PE teacher, so I'm pretty loud. I don't necessarily need a whistle all the time, but then I find myself losing my voice. Like,
exactly.
Time to go to the whistle. All right, favorite app on your phone? What's your go-to app?
Ooh, that's a good question. Probably Spotify. I think there's a lot of good things, with podcasts, with music, I think that you can really find a lot of things that I just, honestly, in the last, probably since COVID, I really started diving into podcasts. I try to find some that are different than my interest on my day-to-day just to try to grow and learn. And I would say probably Spotify, just because you can have so much information there, and kind of hear from different people that you normally wouldn't hear from or see on your social media. You can hear them talking and kind of diving into their personalities.
Yeah, they even got books now and everything. They got
Exactly.
Well, now I'm just curious before I do the last one. Do you have a favorite app, Todd?
Favorite app? I don't know. I don't really. If I could get rid of my phone, I probably would. But it's not. It's necessary evil these days.
Yeah.
You know, if I really have a favorite one.
I don't know if I have a favorite, but I would say I'm probably on Twitter the most just for
Yeah.
the show and everything else. I would say probably Twitter is my most used.
Yeah.
All right. This is a unique one because, we don't have as many D2 coaches on. What was like your favorite or the best gym you coached in D2?
Yeah, that's a good one. The best atmosphere I've ever been a part of, I guess there's two answers. The best atmosphere I've ever been a part of was we played at Missouri Southern our first year in the MIAA. We were top 25 in the country at the time. They were top 10. They had a kid named Cam Martin who ended up grad transferring and going to Kansas. We were both in that top 2 to 3 in our league, and it was packed. They recruited a lot of Oklahoma kids, so there was a big natural rivalry. We beat them on their home court to kind of stretch their like 30-something home win streak. And so that was the best atmosphere I've ever been a part of. And so gym wise, there's a lot of good ones in Division II. I would say playing at Angelo State in the Lone Star, that gym is pretty top notch. I mean, you've got the arena, the video board, the way their fans are. I mean, it's probably one of the best venues to play a college basketball game in Division II level.
Well, Coach, we appreciate you jumping on today. We appreciate it to shout out on social media.
Yeah, I appreciate
coaches.
you guys.
Thank you, coaches. This is definitely a coach you want to follow. He is excellent, and I know he will do well on the high school level. So thank you, Coach, for your time today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast in partnership with the IBCA. Please be sure to rate us on whatever platform you are listening and give us a 5-star rating. For more show content and updates, please follow us on Twitter at After the Timeout. As always, thank you for listening. Tune in next time for more content on the court, off the court, and anything in between.